Howdy friends, welcome to another episode of the Rifle Church channel. So I want to do a video talking about sporterizing military surplus rifles. And so the caption for this video is it sporterized? Question mark. Has it been sporterized? Because you know what, I think that there's a definite answer where no and yes come in. However, that's very black and white. What I believe is that when it comes to sporterizing military surplus rifles is that there's actually a spectrum of answers. Yes, but. And so, first of all, I think that what I'd like to say is that if through any of the other previous videos I've done, I have encouraged people to sporterize their rifles without realizing that I was doing it, then I apologize, because it was never my intention was to encourage people to sporterize their military surplus firearms. Because I think that when you do that, when you sand or strip off all the varnish and or modify the rifle, that constitutes sporterization to a certain level, which means it's no longer really original, as issued by a military to a soldier or from a factory, the way it was issued. Now, anybody who has actually served in a military knows that one level or another to within a certain acceptability band that an NCO would probably accept from their soldiers was that they would do things to their own issued rifles because they didn't like that part of it, or maybe the trigger was just really bad, and so they used there's an interesting video I did many years ago on the paracord trigger job for the AR-15 rifle. You should check that out. But there's lots of people, even in today's modern military, that are making modifications to their issued service rifle. So is that sporterizing? Even if it's happening today? So is that sporterizing? So I'm just going to go through a list and maybe kind of search the spectrum of levels of different kind of types of sporterizing that we can think about and ask ourselves, is it actually sporterized? Okay, so I mean, for example, I've been thinking about the cabin fever challenge lately and which firearms that I would like to challenge or to use in that challenge. And so the SKS is pretty much the only kind of firearm that I could. Well, no, it's not the only, but for Division 1 vintage semi-auto, is that I might want to run an SKS, for example. A lot of people shoot SKSs because, well, they can and they qualify. But this rifle, first of all, you'll notice the stock is white. Now, what Russian or Soviet or Warsaw Pact country issued their soldiers white stocks? Maybe a parade rifle or something like that, or it's got chrome on it and stuff like that, maybe. However, I'll admit, I painted this stock because I thought it looked cool. And also the rifle has been bedded in conformance with the Art Lupino method, which was designed for the M1A M14 rifle. I basically took that general concept and used a bedding compound, and I bedded this SKS in conformance with that basically that principle of bedding for semi-automatic rifles, including around the ferrule here and so on. So yeah, that would definitely qualify as sporterizing. However, I haven't really sporterized this rifle because I acquired a second stock, kept the original, which is right here. This is the original stock. So I can return it to its former condition easy. So I mean, there's been no permanent modifications made to this rifle. So it's sporterized. It's not original anymore, but I can return it. So it's not really sporterized. Do you know what I mean? On the spectrum, this rifle here, for example, this is a number 4 Mark 1 Star Lee Enfield made by Long Branch. Okay, this rifle has been center bedded right here. Right here. So there's a block right here underneath the barrel. The Knox form, this area here has all been bedded, and the muzzle is free floated. Okay, so has this rifle been sporterized? Okay, what if I told you that this was my Ranger rifle when I was in the Canadian Armed Forces. I retired, and Lursa, the name of this rifle, came with me. It was gifted to me when I retired by Her Majesty the Queen, and it just so happens that this rifle was bedded while it was in service serving the Canadian Armed Forces, and it was slung over my shoulder for a long time. Has this rifle been sporterized? This is how it was issued to me, and it's how it left the military service, and it's how it still remains today. It's even got the sticker on here for when I need to know what my come-ups were out to 500 meters. And the sling's got my name and my service number imprinted on it. So has this rifle been sporterized, or is it all military original? So there is a spectrum, there's a timeline. I mean, obviously it didn't come from the factory like this. This was match bedded by a regimental armorer for their shooting team, doing DCRA and service rifle competitions. So, I know that's not the way it came from the factory, but it has been modified in the military to serve a certain purpose. Here's another interesting one. I don't consider that one to be sporterized, by the way. Some of you would. It's just how objective are we on the scale of things when we evaluate things like sporterization. This here is an M1 Garand. It is rifle 274. Brita rifle. Rome, Italy. So when this rifle came to us, it was just a receiver. So it was one of those many thousands and thousands of stripped receivers that came from Italy into the country, United States, Canada, other places. And so it was all built with, even though it's an Italian receiver, it's all original Springfield Armory parts, with the exception of the trigger group and the barrel. The barrel is a Criterion barrel in 308 Winchester, a chrome lined barrel, and the stock is made by Dupage USA, black walnut. And so is this rifle sporterized? Well, I kind of put this into the category of a Resto-mod, very much like what you see people do with their vehicles. You have people who have a vehicle that is absolutely numbers matching, all original, and that is the value of that car, is because it is all original. It doesn't matter the condition. It can be show class, or it can just be a daily driver, but it's all original, and it's had nothing special done to it. Well, this is kind of like the opposite of that. It looks like it's original. It looks like it just came off the factory floor. It's all nicely phosphated. However, is it sporterized? It's more of a Resto-mod is the way I kind of look at it, considering it was only just a receiver when I got it, or when we got it. But the question is, has it been sporterized? Question mark. All right, let's try this one. So, at first glance, this SMLE, this number 1 Mark III, it's actually, it's a British SMLE. So, I mean, this rifle is in 303 British, this Lee Enfield, and it was remanufactured by Parker Hale many moons ago to become a hunting rifle. I think we can all agree that this has been sporterized, right? But it's a factory custom job by Parker Hale to meet there were lots of these on the market at the time. There are millions and millions of them in barrels at everybody's mountain equipment store or hardware store. $20 each in a barrel. Originally looked like this. Originally looked like this right here. This is actually an Indian SMLE, number 1 Mark III. the bolt isn't matching, which is pretty commonplace. This thing was manufactured in 1953, and it's gone through several different, what I would refer to as a partial refurbishment in the Indian Army. But it's essentially the same rifle. It's just a few pounds heavier, and it's got all the original parts. And it's interesting because depending on the application of the rifle, it's essentially the same thing, but it will serve totally two different purposes. Okay, you could use this for hunting, but I remember in 2021, I remember watching the news, and there was a guy, his city was literally on fire. There were riots in the streets, plundering, pillaging, assault, rapes. I mean, it was basically without rule of law, total and complete chaos. The fire department was nowhere to be seen. The police were nowhere to be seen. We're talking about a war zone, okay? And he was standing in front of his store with a Lee Enfield, and it was similarly configured to this. I mean, it was essentially original. However, he had fixed bayonets. All right, and he's standing in front of his store, protecting it. Okay. Now there's a word, I think it's called deterrence. We refer to it commonly as nuclear deterrence. We have nuclear weapons. You have nuclear weapons. In order to avoid, global disaster, I'm going to have nuclear weapons. You're going to have nuclear weapons. You launch at me, it's mutual assured destruction. Okay, so I mean, having something like this is something like having a deterrent. And a lot of that has to do with your ability to influence somebody not to come at you and do harm to you. Now, how much deterrence factor do you think this has compared to the bayonet on the same rifle? Okay, so I think the bayonet would win. It would certainly make me think twice about wanting to approach that guy. This rifle here is a VZ24 in G24T wood. So before World War II, the Brno factory was manufacturing the VZ24 rifle, which is essentially very similar to this. It's even got a VZ24 action in this rifle. It's got all the original Brno marks on it. But it's essentially a newly manufactured rifle post World War II, using both while Czechoslovakia was occupied by the Germans. They started manufacturing stocks at their factory that were configured with laminated wood with a bolt tear-down disc and different sling attachments so that it would conform more to the German configuration of the Key 98K. It retained the full wood and handguards and so on, just like the VZ24, but it was wearing and they renamed it the G24T. But this is a Brno factory-made rifle with non-matching parts, all fitted perfectly the way you would want it. And it left the Brno factory wearing all these different pre-war and World War II parts. So it's a very interesting rifle. But has it been sporterized? Because it's not matching, and it doesn't have, it's not an original VZ24. So it's a hybrid, I guess you'd say. I don't think it is a sporterized rifle, because this is how it came from a factory. So tired, so configured. From the Brno factory itself. This is not a remanufactured rifle. And yet, it's all numbers, none of the numbers match. It's never been sanded. It's a beautiful rifle, that G24T. So this here is a Yugoslavian M48. And when it came to me, it was absolutely awful. Got it in grease, pulled it out of the grease. The stock was covered. I was always getting cut up in splinters running this rifle. And I don't have baby bum hands. I'm working in wood all the time, running chainsaw. I work in the bush, so my hands get used, so I don't have, if I'm still getting splinters and I notice it, oh, okay, it's like a porcupine, this stock. So I polished it a little bit to get rid of that thing. For me, that's just common sense. I'm getting rid of a safety hazard, okay? Does that sporterize the rifle? So I also took some compounds and I polished up the raceways, removed the trigger assembly, kind of dehorned it, polished it. Really, really improved the shootability of the rifle. It's all numbers matching. And have I sporterized this M48 in the process of doing that? It's not 100% completely original anymore, is it? But I'm telling you, I didn't do anything differently than a Yugoslavian soldier out in the field would have probably been doing. Whether it's just running the action back and forth, hastening the wear so it runs smoother, because the trigger was not pleasant. And by doing what I did, I significantly improved my ability to put rounds on target, and ultimately that's what's important. That's what a soldier is probably thinking about. It's what a competitor is thinking about, is rounds on target. But has it been sporterized? And the last example I'll give you is one of my favorite rifles. I mean, I've just been touching all these different rifles, and this by far, it's got probably the smoothest bolt out of all of them. Just smooth. Glass. I didn't do anything to improve that. That's just the way they were made. Anyway, this is a Model 9130. And it was manufactured in 1939 at the Izvest factory. When I got it, I was a lot younger. I didn't really appreciate kind of what, having a rifle that's in original condition is worth. I think I don't know, I can't remember exactly what I paid for it, but these were much less expensive than they are now. I'm seeing these in relatively rough shape, selling it for $450 in Canada, maybe a little bit higher if it's and upwards of around $1,000 for a pristine, clean barrel, almost brand new condition, which is really incredible to me that prices have gone to where they are. But I think it's all connected to the sporterizing thing, because you're going to grade your rifle depending on what type of modifications the rifle has received over time, and probably by numerous different owners. I mean, that one owner does this, that owner does this, and soon before you know it, you've got a Heinz 57 rifle. Now this is an all numbers matching rifle. However, and I haven't done anything to the bedding because it already shot so well. I have adjusted the sights. I've raised the front peep sight. I am going to be putting a Triggersmith front sight on here. Check him out if you've never been to his website. I've also stripped the wood because all of the shellac was half flaked off. It was just coming off. Like every time you'd handle the rifle, you'd have shellac dust everywhere around where you were. So it was coming off, and so I chemically removed the remainder. I did not sand the rifle. All of the cartouches, all of the stamps are in wonderful condition. In fact, you can actually see them better now than you could before. I added a little bit I did stain the wood, but you can see there's a little bit of tonal differences in the wood. I added that using stain, so that's kind of fake. Do you know what I mean? There's a pale piece right here, but it's dark on the other side. That's me playing with stain and just painting it on thin layers, letting it dry, and I'm tiger striping it, and it's fake. I did that. I've also got a Tikka M39 trigger in here, so it's a 2-stage trigger. And my God, does this thing shoot good. I don't need to do anything else to it. Everything else about it is completely original. But is it sporterized? Have I sporterized this rifle? I think I probably have. I think it qualifies on the spectrum somewhere in that in that from yes to no. It's not a yes or a no, it's somewhere in between. So that's essentially it. I'm not telling you whether a rifle is sporterized or not. I'm just giving you some criteria and thoughts behind kind of how a person might help themselves to define whether one is or not. Grinding metal, sanding out cartouches and so on it's not really cool in my opinion. Like for example, this Indian SMLE, it is full of, well, it's an experienced stock, like so many of these Indian SMLEs are. This is an experienced piece of wood. There's big chunks that are missing out of it. It's red Meranti from India. It's not a really robust wood compared to, say, ash or elm or walnut, beech. So many of these rifles, birch with the Russian stocks. It's not quite as robust as those other species, the red Meranti or the Luan mahogany, as people like to call it. It's not actually mahogany. It's Meranti. It's a Meranti species. There's like 32 different species of it. It's all over Southeast Asia and India, and so that's what they were making their stocks out of. Now I could have sanded all of those. You can consider them to be flaws. I don't think they're flaws. That's part of the character of the rifle, and I don't want to lose any of that. All I've done is basically just with a damp cloth, washed off the grime, and then recoated with boiled linseed oil. Brought it back up to it's kind of its full body where it's supposed to be. It soaked a lot of oil up. It needed it. Sandpaper has not touched any of those rifles. But are they sporterized? Only you can answer that one. Hope you guys are doing great. Cheers, and as always, Maple Leaf up.